This is Gunnar Sivertsen speaking to you in Webinar 2 on Perspectives on Academic Career Assessment in Europe. My title is Academic Career Assessment for Open Science, How to Proceed. I will discuss this on the basis of two resources that have been published. One is the survey that was presented in Webinar 1 yesterday, performed by EUA among its members, and its own research assessment in the transition to open science. The other resource is the so-called Open Science Career Evaluation Matrix that was proposed by a working group working for the European Commission in 2017. I will present 4 ideas about how to proceed, 2 ideas related to the survey, and they are to create mutual learning among the universities by observing differences and providing good examples. And the second idea connected to the survey is to create an overview and discussion of national evaluation and funding systems from the perspective of universities and open science. The 2 ideas connected to the matrix are ideas that we are already following now in a working group in Norway. So we are working to develop this career assessment at matrix into a general national guide and then report back to EUA. And in the process, we discovered that there's also a need to investigate possible documentation sources to avoid heavier burdens of evidence on individuals as they prepare their CV according to this matrix. The general results of the survey are that merits connected to scientific publishing and metrics based on the same, as well as attracting external research funding, still dominate among the criteria and methods for evaluation, and also that open science and open access are not yet commonly part of the incentive and reward system for researchers. The report is about general findings across all countries and universities. It says itself that it does not capture important national and disciplinary differences, and I think there might even be differences among universities in the same country. But perhaps as a next step, and this is my first idea, you could start up the dynamics of observing differences, which might lead to mutual learning and progress among the universities. So one could ask, are there universities there that we could learn from, all of us, with regard to the aspects of open science in assessment? The second idea is related to my experience with studying national evaluation and funding systems in Europe across all countries. They can be a constraint on open science career development within institutions. They can influence the practices in all the evaluation contexts that researchers usually relate to. So my idea is to study these systems from the perspective of open science and from the perspective of the universities themselves. My experience is positive with a mutual learning exercise among governments in Europe on how they fund the universities and how they arrange for their evaluation. But this mutual learning exercise was not done from the perspective of the universities, and open science was not a clear dimension. So perhaps there could be a new process initiated by the universities themselves and in dialogue with governments at European level to clarify how these funding and evaluation systems promote or are a constraint to open science in the evaluation of researchers and their projects. I now proceed to the two ideas related to the Open Science Career Assessment Matrix. We are a working group appointed by Universities Norway, and we are currently exploring how dimensions from the Open Science Career Evaluation Matrix can be used in a general national guide, not only focusing on open science, for the assessment of researchers and projects. Our ambition is to create a general guide for the assessment of researchers and their projects in our country. And so we expand the matrix. We integrate possible open science activities. They are then integrated in general activities that can be described in such a matrix. And also the criteria for performing open science are integrated in general criteria for the assessment of researchers and their projects. And then we extend the matrix with 3 more columns. We describe the activity. We look at documentation sources, possible documentation sources for the activities. And we discuss why these activities might be important. Going through each row and column, we discovered that documentation sources may be a problem as you expand the criteria and the methods beyond the normal information sources about publications and their metrics. And then as we create this, we get afraid that there will be heavier burdens of evidence on individuals if they are not helped by a flexible CV system where other information that might be needed can be imported. Now in our country, we have a current research information system at the national level. Such systems exist in most countries in Europe, but mostly at the institutional level. But they exist there. And they should really have a flexible CV module that where the documentation sources, as far as possible, could be represented and found more or less automatically. So there would be less need for the individual researcher to document everything in the CV. So altogether, the 4 ideas are then to create mutual learning by observing differences and providing good examples among European universities, to overview and discuss national evaluation and funding systems from the perspective of universities and open science, to develop the open science career assessment matrix into a more general national guide, and then we will report this example back to European University Association. And then to investigate possible documentation sources to avoid heavier burdens of evidence on individuals. The last 2 ideas are being realized by this little working group in Norway. The 2 first ideas, of course, are just ideas that are open to discussion. Thank you very much.